So yeah, so yeah, yeah. So it's kind of all in power over there, and then construction, and then road, bridges, and stuff. So that's our new. Yeah. So do you have counterparts? Yeah. So Ohio has so every state has like state building trades. Some are some local are really strong. So like in Ohio, they have a really strong building trades. They also have really strong like, and then they also have an act division like we do. Some states have what they call fair contracting groups, and their focus is more on specifically on public processes for public contracting. So like Pennsylvania is the Pennsylvania Alliance for Fair, and they do a lot of stuff there. New York is similar that they do the fair contracting, basically saying, okay, in the prevailing wage world, if you there are a lot of contractors that pay prevailing wage, but do it in unscrupulous ways. I don't know if you ever saw the story in Pennsylvania last, maybe it's been 2 years ago now. There was a big, now Governor Shapiro, when he was Attorney General, brought kind of one of the very first ever cases against a contractor who was kind of a wage theft thing, but it was on the benefit side. He started his own. I do remember. It's like Hallbaker is the name of the company. Huge, huge company. Sweet Sunbelt, but yeah. I'll send you a story. Like, so it's kind of like so that's what a lot of them focus on that. Like it's all worker protection related. It's just kind of how you get there and what which and where you're at, right? Because Pennsylvania's landscape politically is different than Virginia and different than Ohio, right? And so there's just differences in how everybody operates and what they do. We do a lot of stuff with our public service commission. Okay. So because we're a regulated utility state, okay, right? So they have to they're going to do siting certificates. They have to go through the public service commission and they get approved. Oh, and so we intervene in a lot of those cases. Okay. So that's how everyone knows West Virginia has been built by our people because we've worked with the developer. Mm-hmm. And so that's also how we work with Tiffany and this group is that they represent a lot of the developers in their fee for something that they're getting. Yeah. If you do it right, you go into the community, you get community buy-in, everybody's happy, right? And so we have members in this community. So we go and we speak at public hearings in support of the jobs that are here today. So one of the things, same questions. So one of the things that particularly fascinates me about Western is the population declines and the aging population. Oh. So like, and one of the things we went and did an event in Florida, it's like an energy expo, and the utility company, one of the guys from Florida Power and Light was just beside him because he was like, what we need to talk about is the fact that 60% of people they want to stay in more. Sure. Okay. Dr. Rick is going to. I just wanted to I'll just do yours. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. He was screaming not essentially being paid the fact that 60% of the utility members is retirement age. Yeah. Simply like on a macro level, there's just not enough workers. Yeah, and it's part of our recruitment, thing too. Is like we're constantly recruiting new recruits every year, right? Bringing some in, people retire. But in the next 5 year window, there's significant retirement. Doesn't mean they're all going to retire the day they retire, right? But like you have to prepare for that. And so everybody needs to bring in a handful more every year. And then on top of that, you've now got this construction that's going to come up. And then what people often don't think about is that not only the construction, which is great for us, that's a great job in a career. The maintenance on these facilities is really what keeps people in a career. Mm-hmm. So like historically, we built the whole powerhouse 80 years ago, right? Whatever the case may be. But we've maintained it for the last 7 years. And so going from maintaining that power source to a solar home or a wind farm takes significantly less people to maintain it. Okay. Until a wind farm, until you do a complete rebuild, right? So like at a powerhouse, there's a couple hundred workers there, pretty much nonstop, and they just shut down. There's 1,000 workers there to come in, they shut it completely down, and they replace everything, right? Seals and valves and this whole thing, the Addison farm that happens, right? You got people placing wires or whatever the case may be, but it doesn't take the number of workers to do it. And a wind farm is the same, like day-to-day operations. Only every 20, 25 years when they come and do our repowers. Does that happen? Right? And we've seen that already. We've done 2 repowers. We're about to do a third one with solar farms. Probably a fourth one in the next year or two as well. Like when they come in. But so one of them they're getting ready to take down. There's 50 there now, and they're only going to put 35 back up because they're more efficient and they generate more energy now, which is great. Like wonderful, but you know, it's only building 35, not 50. So like at the same time, there's the pieces too. So
management challenge, I would imagine.
yeah,
From like people and processes and upgrades.
yeah, and so that's where that's where I mean that's we have a really good partnership with our contractors because they're what we do. Everything we do is jointly administered between the contractor and union. Our training facilities, that's how they're managed. So we know kind of well, right? There's all these construction outlets happening, but that way we're training people for everything. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at ways to train people on hydrogen, training people on solar. Windmill kind of got down, and it's a little easier than hydrogen. Solar is pretty easy to train on because it's still construction generally, but hydrogen's a little bit different. Just pipelines are stronger because the way the increased pressure in a pipeline for hydrogen versus natural gas or oil. It's a different type of pressure.
So since you brought up hydrogen, are you involved with the hydrogen fund?
We are.
Okay, so you know area.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so when we did this last year, area was on the.
Oh nice. Yeah.
And now I've lost where they are in that process,
So,
the DOE.
Yeah, so they're through the end. They're in the final 12 or 8 or 12, and I actually had a call with them on Friday.
So, you know Eric, so.
Yeah. So and she and my dad went to high school together. Yeah. So really random. Oh yeah. You need West Virginia, the small places. So. Yeah. And it's good. I mean, so like I have a lot of really good friends that went to Wesleyan.
I have a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah, especially from Parker. Yeah.
Oh.
So I'm trying to think. So randomly like Parker, you're my age. So Brandon Williams, you north or you south or Parker High? Okay. So he's a year older, but he was like a wrestler. I think he was Parker's though. Yeah. There's a bunch of it, yeah. But like, so were you in Cerulean?
Yes.
Which one? Okay. I think who I knew. So I have a lot of friends that were Alpha Z's because my friend Ashley Skudensky, Ashley, yeah. So she was a 40. So she was a 4-H. So I met Ashley. Same thing since we were 12. And so Ashley,
I don't know the shoot.
So anytime I would go back home, if I came in, I would always go. She lived in it's by where the parish house is now, like one of those like off campus houses.
Oh yeah.
And so I would went over there and go with them and yeah.
Such a small.
Yeah.
Oh, we started at 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
An hour.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So, okay.
And like
So
Ryan Thorne.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
So Ryan, I've known for a long
I'm so
time.
excited. I'm trying to get into here, and usually it's the ARC, the Appalachian.
Yeah. They're in Kentucky. Yeah. I actually emailed him on Friday, and I was like, "What IRA have you done in West Virginia?" He's like, "Actually, we just did our first one with the REAP stuff last week." And so, I mean, that's what we're kind of at. We have a lot of outfits that have a lot of shovels in the ground yet for IRA things, but infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds already. And so yeah. So I've known Ryan. So when I first moved to Charleston, Ryan and myself, and then we called it Kurt's like Moose.
Oh.
We all. Yeah. Oh yeah. So Kurt's like one of my best friends. Well,
I have so many memories. Oh my god.
Actually, was texting with him today. So.
What is he doing?
So he randomly. So we met on politics,
Yes.
right? And so he was a director of the party in the state.
Okay.
And then one of our other friends is the director of our the Nile Valley Regional Transit Authority. I think that's right. And he's the director of operations.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's a good. And they're actually applying for hydrogen to do hydrogen buses with Lucida's main office. Yeah, so we wrote them a support letter because they want to build a whole building and use our people to do it. So
it's fantastic.
yeah,
He's
yeah. Oh yeah.
See, so we went. I mean,
No, no.
Okay.
We used to, like this is my first year I had WBC tickets. The tickets with me. I have two small streets. So they take too much time now. So 9 and 4. That's gosh. That's
And
yeah, yeah.
like, please take me. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, oh, that's so good to hear. Like, it's so big. Yeah, Morris, I'm so excited for him because UB probably has to find someone who loves West Virginia. And I'm so glad that he is in a position to really get into it.
Yeah, he's been. I mean, I've known him from time all the way like back to 2008, and he's just done a lot of stuff. And I mean, we went out. So I was state president for Young Kids, and he was my treasurer. Brian was it. Yeah, it's a very small world. So I've known him for a long time. We hang together.
I know state.
Yeah.
Like, well, I went to Maryland, and then I went to grad school,
Okay.
and then I went to DC,
Yeah.
and then I was five. So, yeah, I never met. So the closest I've gotten is with the Citizens Fund Lobby folks.
Yeah.
I had not heard of them until like a year ago, and we actually gave a presentation at their big conference in June. So we had three stars on a panel talking about climate impacts.
Yeah.
That's typically we don't usually get into the weeds of like legislators.
Yes. Specifically. I mean, it's a big deal for me. You know, I was actually I had a call with General Hoyer a couple a month ago now about some of the rare earth mineral stuff that they're going into you with DEP and you know, yeah, like I'm and I'm like, right? So like these kind of things, like I can, they like I've had so many of these conversations now. Like I come from it not from construction, I come from the legal side of it.
Yes.
And I'll get on these like calls and like with Ara, and they like start. I don't know. I guess they say it different every time. And like my coworkers said, actually, you know the right. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm just going with it. Uh, and so, but like they start talking about like the things, and I'm just like I had to sit in. They did a panel on DOE, like a room like this, like two rows of people like facing each other, right? All the DOE staff, all the Arch 2 people, like questions back and forth, all this conversation. I was lucky enough, I only had to do it virtually as like one of the community benefits people. But I was on there all day, like literally like 7.5 hours. And I'm like, listen, I mean, I'm obviously doing other things, but like listening, like there were some of those things like when they're getting into like the, it's like, and same with like we met with the power people. They would they're doing the carbon capture, sequestration, and that stuff, and was one of the Orion clients too. So same thing, like they were talking. Listen, we think we can scale it up to this because, and I'm like, sure. Yeah, like I'm intrigued by it. I just don't know. Like, oh yeah,
And I hope she's like talking about this stuff, and I'm like, okay, you can't say that like that because you sound like a robot.
yeah.
Like you're incredibly you are an engineer. You cannot say this and things like this. You know? So it was trying to wrap my brain around tech stuff. Oh, it's just blessing.
And that's like the thing that made so Jackson County, that's a micro grid. There's as far as for here. Who's doing a micro grid where they're doing a natural gas.
Okay.
They're taking the gas, using what they need to create power for the airport, and then selling the rest of it into the market for them.
Okay.
Because that's what Pittsburgh Airport did.
Yeah.
And so they're basically doing the same thing they did at Pittsburgh. Hey, it's actually this. And I'm like, and apparently one of the technologies, Clarksburg, is newer than Pittsburgh. And it's like this brand new technology, and the company's looking for a place to build. They're trying to get them built at the Clarksburg Airport. So you build it here at an airport, you ship it somewhere you want. I was like, perfect. Like, sounds great. Like, I have not even. As long as you build something there, I'm happy to do.
Exactly.
Let's build it.
Yeah. Nothing up there. So,
but they just they're doing new infrastructure. The IJA, they're an $80 million. It's gonna be awesome, and that's part of this whole microgrid thing. I think it might be more of that. It's gonna be awesome.
They know that this mentions female hosts. It's like two.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what
it was. Yeah, I think it's more than that. Well, I know there's like $3.4 billion of IIJ money, and I was like trying to track it. There's 18 airports are getting infrastructure money. Like, I didn't know there were 18 airports in infrastructure yet. It's like these every tiny ass little airport.
maybe Parkersburg is one of them because
I'm sure they're not. Yeah. Yeah, where did you find Columbus?
Well, so I now, so we literally a month ago moved. I still have a house in Parkersburg. My husband stationed in Norfolk, so a month ago. So
that's true.
it's rough. Because
like, yeah, because it's a small airport. And you have to find like
Charlotte or Philly.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Charlotte's great.
Yeah, but not to fly through. I mean, it's a nice.
It's gonna take more.
Oh yeah, it'll take you all day.
Yeah. So, Parkersburg used to have a great shuttle once or twice a day to DC, and then Clarkston. But like, if that flight didn't go, we were just screwed. So it's first world problems. But
yeah, that's
hi, John. Good. How are you? I'll come say hi. I thought.
Hi, everyone. Just a note, if you haven't already, there is hot food and refreshments in the back. So before we begin, if you'd like to grab yourself a little plate, it's all there for you. Rally Justin up here.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see everybody here at the University of Charleston. My name's Marty Roth. I'm the president here at UC. We're thrilled to be hosting you here today, and thank you for attending today's panel. And the focus for today is the Inflation Reduction Act at Year One, Impacts and Opportunities for West Virginia. And we are honored to be able to collaborate once again with the American Security Project. This is the third year that we've done a collaborative panel discussion with them, and I'm sure this will be as insightful as the previous ones have been. So today we have invited West Virginia's legislators, municipal leaders, economic leaders, and community members to learn about what the Inflation Reduction Act has done for West Virginia since being signed into law on August 16th, 2022, and what the future holds for the Inflation Reduction Act's huge investment in clean energy and manufacturing. West Virginia has a rich history of energy production. The passage of the Inflation Reduction Act shall help West Virginia maintain its status as one of the leading energy production states with an all-of-the-above portfolio approach. Since last year, the Inflation Reduction Act has brought in nearly 5,000 new clean energy jobs to West Virginia. Not only has the IRA opened up new opportunities for West Virginia's energy and manufacturing portfolio, but it aims to help small business as well by supporting energy-saving investments. Small businesses represent over 98% of all businesses in West Virginia, and the Mountain State is reliant on its hardworking population, and the IRA is slated to help them cut costs in order to help their respective businesses. The future is bright here in West Virginia. Before we dive into today's event, I am proud to introduce the panel's moderator, Dr. Kristen Dugan, who will provide a short commemoration of this historic day of September 11th, as well as introduce today's panelists. So thank you all for being here today, and Dr. Dugan, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Roth. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin today's panel, we would like to open the event with a Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence to honor those affected by the events of September 11th. I pledge allegiance to the flag. And if you'll remain standing, please join me in a moment of silence as we honor those who lost their lives on this tragic day in our nation's history 22 years ago. Thank you. Please be seated. Today marks the third event that the University of Charleston has hosted alongside with the American Security Project, and we're even more thrilled that we're actually in person this year, and we also have those joining us virtually. The Inflation Reduction Act represents over $370 billion in clean energy investments and grants, including grants, rebates, and incentives for clean energy, technology, manufacturing, and innovation. With such a significant amount of money available for federal funding, we'd like to take the time to discuss what is possible for West Virginia. The Inflation Reduction Act has helped usher in large-scale projects such as Berkshire Hathaway Renewables' renewable energy microgrid-powered industrial site in Jackson County, and Form Energy's iron air battery manufacturing plant in Weirton. This created hundreds of good-paying jobs for West Virginians. As leaders, it is our duty to learn about the opportunities that are out there to make our communities a better place. As you know, U.S. Senator Joe Manchin was crucial in the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act just a little over a year ago. We're excited to have Alex Hewitt in attendance with us today, representing Senator Manchin. At this time, please welcome Alex to give a few remarks on Senator Manchin's behalf. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alex Hewitt. I'm with Senator Manchin's office. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, but I talked to him on the phone this morning, and he wanted to thank every single one of you for being here today and for hosting this great event. The senator believes this is a revolutionary bill for the state and believes it has brought in a lot of great jobs and will continue to do that in the future. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so that's about all I have, but thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Alex. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce our panelists. So we're pleased to have our very own Dr. John Barnett join us today. Dr. Barnett is a retired Major General and Commanding General in the West Virginia Army National Guard. Dr. Barnett serves as the University of Charleston's Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Dr. Barnett, we thank you for your service to our country, and we're thrilled to have you join us today.
Thank you very much. I want to echo the warm welcome of Dr. Roth, and thank you for being here today, visiting the campus and its beautiful scenic overview. So I had great weather today for that, and also for participating in this most important forum. I'm not going to speak much to the specifics of the act, but I'm going to go back and speak a little bit about the foundational pieces, the leadership that's required to make the act successful in our state and local communities. So today I want to touch on two topics regarding that. One that Dr. Dugan alluded to that shaped our nation's history, and other the opportunity that's upon us with the IRA, and speak a little bit about the role of state and local leaders in response to these. The events of September the 11th and the Inflation Reduction Act both require leadership. A crucial role must be played by our state and local leaders. Let's reflect a little bit, though, back to September the 11th, 2001. It was a day that forever changed our nation and even the world. That day we experienced the most deadly terrorist attack in our nation's history. The attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon and the thwarted attack on Flight 93 claimed the lives of over 3,000 people. These attacks left countless others injured physically and emotionally, and those scars remain today. In the aftermath of this tragedy, our nation united in grief and resilience. Our national, state, and local leaders played a crucial role in providing support, comfort, and guidance to our communities, those hurting and those in need. They worked tirelessly to ensure the safety and security of constituents, coordinating emergency response efforts and offering solace to those affected by the attacks. Their leadership and dedication during this challenging time were instrumental in letting our nation heal and rebuild. Excuse me. In the aftermath of 9/11, our nation faced immense economic challenges. The shockwaves were felt throughout the financial systems and our nation's institutions, causing uncertainty and instability. However, just as we came together to heal and rebuild, we can now address our citizens' economic hardships by using the Inflation Reduction Act as a unifying tool. The act was enabled partially in response to the rising inflation costs threatening our economic stability. Its stated aims were to curb inflation by implementing measures such as reducing government spending, tightening monetary policy, promoting fiscal responsibility, and rebuilding the spine for our energy sector. all needed for economic stability. The Act, with its provisions at alleviating the financial burdens faced by our citizens, excuse me, the Act presents an opportunity to revitalize our community and our economy. It is an opportunity to use our collective determination to overcome challenges and create a brighter future. Similar to the events of 9/11, our economy has suffered a devastating blow. But these two challenges, again, reveal the spirit of the American people to heal, sustain itself, and thrive. The passing of the Act, in my opinion, signifies our commitment to learning from the past and ensuring that our economy remains resilient in the face of adversity. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, we can rise above and create a better future for ourselves and future generations. The Act is not just about numbers and policies. It's about the lives of people. It's about providing relief to hardworking individuals and families who have faced financial hardships for far too long. It's about allowing them to rebuild their lives, pursue their dreams, and secure a brighter future. To take advantage of the Act's opportunity, leadership and vision must be present at every level, both at the governmental sector as well in the private arena. As we reflect again today on the tragic events of September the 11th, let us remember that resilience and strength emerged from the ashes. Let us not forget that the lives lost on that fateful day and the 22 years that followed honored the bravery of those who gave all and those who sacrificed so much. Let us celebrate the lives lost by continuing to build a nation that is united, compassionate, and committed to the well-being of its people. Leaders' unwavering commitment to the nation and communities has helped shape our nation before and continues to be needed today. Implementing the Act is an opportunity, again, to gain experience from the past, to heal and create a more prosperous and secure America for all. Our state and local leaders play a vital role in implementing this Act. They must lead with character and competence and put aside partisan politics for the good of their constituents, working hand in hand with federal authorities to ensure effective execution at the grassroots level. Leaders must make, in this environment, tough decisions, prioritizing their needs of their community while adhering to the guidelines of the Act. Their commitment to fiscal responsibility and the ability to navigate complex economic policy are crucial in stabilizing our economy and setting us on a firm path toward recovery. As I said, state and local leaders' role in implementing the Act extend beyond economic measures. They must recognize the importance of investing in education, in health care, and infrastructure to foster long-term growth and prosperity. We must not see it as a series of one-time projects. They must champion initiatives that aim to improve the quality of life of our constituents, ensuring that all the benefits are necessary for economic stability over the long run. In conclusion, the events of September the 11th, 2001, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the role of local and state leaders in its implementation are integrated and interconnected chapters in our nation's history. The tragedy of 9/11 tested our resilience and our unity. Our military, their family, our national, state, and local leaders rose to the occasion then, responding to the terrorists while supporting and guiding their communities. The Inflation Reduction Act offers another opportunity to unite. However, these leaders' expertise, cooperation, and dedication are required to ensure the successful implementation and bring about again the greatness of our nation, our state, and our local communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett, for your powerful message. Next, I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Jessica Olcott Yelmo. Jessica is the Director of Climate Security Programs with the American Security Project. Jessica, on behalf of the University of Charleston, we are grateful for your collaboration, arranging important conversations for West Virginians to have for the future of our state. We're also excited to have Mr. Justin Williams here today. Justin is the Director of the West Virginia Affiliated Construction Trades. The Inflation Reduction Act has brought thousands of new jobs to the Mountain State, and we're excited to hear his perspective on what this legislation means for West Virginia moving forward. So let's begin. So our first question is for Ms. Yelmo. What is the Inflation Reduction Act, and what does it do?
Thank you, first of all, for the University of Charleston for hosting us here. And I'm going to speak a little bit about the federal level, but I also would like to say welcome to Delegate Hansen, who might be able to provide more insight about what the discussions are at the state level. The Inflation Reduction Act, as most people know, was signed just over a year ago. It's a package of federal legislation that includes many different things. I would be remiss if I did not mention the Medicare caps. So it caps insulin at $35, which is a huge benefit for the aging population and anybody who needs insulin in West Virginia. As well as the bulk of our conversation today, which will be focused on the energy incentives and the financial incentives and funding that is available in the Inflation Reduction Act. So it has $370 billion in clean energy investments that can go to a variety of states and stakeholders and companies. It has set-asides for almost every group you can think of, including homeowners, renters and multifamily units, school districts, nonprofits, and religious institutions. I'm not sure if anybody from Interfaith Power and Light was able to join us today, but churches, houses of worship, boys and girls clubs, things like that. There's a lot of money to go around and a lot of money to be had. So we've just passed 1 year, and we're just starting to see implementation come to the fold. The DOE, the Department of Energy, just issued its guidance in July on how states can apply for their portions of the Inflation Reduction Act that will fund up to $1 billion in consumer utility bills. So that includes home upgrades from insulation or windows to solar panels or other retrofits on houses.
Thank you. The next question is for all panelists. Dr. Barnett, we'll start with you. What specifically do you think is most appealing about the IRA for opportunities in West Virginia?
I think what's most appealing to me is that it can make a real difference in the areas that the state is hurting most, and that is in good jobs and support to families, and be a means and provides an opportunity for people to remain in West Virginia to work and have a really good life. And I think there's lots of opportunities for that if we take advantage of them.
Thank you. Ms. Yelmo?
Yeah, I think this is definitely feels like an inflection point where we will point to and look at and say, you know, did we get left behind, or did we choose not to keep up? And at this point, the state has a lot of power to decide the direction with these funds. The state, of course, has the authority to decline the funds. There's already been some discussion in a couple of states, primarily the governor of Florida, Governor DeSantis, has indicated his displeasure with these funds, and he does not want to take any funding, which is in direct conflict with the state legislature in Florida, as well as the Department of Energy in Florida. So we'll see how that shakes out. But so far, no state has declined the funds. There have already been states that have been awarded provisional funds. So California, Texas already has systems, or they already have systems in place to distribute the funds. So another state is Vermont. They're at capacity right now for this kind of thing. So, but they've already put in their proposals for the funds. So we tried to get someone from the Department of Energy, the West Virginia Department of Energy, to come today, but unfortunately they were not able to join us. But this is really an opportunity where all of us as West Virginia citizens can make our voices heard. If we want to get our share of these funds, then definitely speak to your leadership. And this is a really important moment. And for the record, the state has about a year to make that proposal.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Thanks. I think there's a number of things that really beneficial to West Virginia and West Virginia workers, particularly. Every one of these projects that would come out of one of these things would, it's new manufacturing, it's clean manufacturing, so it's construction jobs, it's maintenance jobs, it's manufacturing jobs, and those are careers for people to sustain their families. And what's nice about the Inflation Reduction Act is that it requires a living wage, and once organizations that pay benefits to their workers, and we talked about the healthcare caps, but also these jobs would have healthcare benefits along with them. And so it's not just a construction job, it's a construction career, and lets people live in those jobs and do what they want to do for a living and do it for the next 40 to 50 years. And so I think that's really an opportunity, unlike we've seen probably since, the New Deal kind of days as far as construction and investments in workers, on top of, what happened. And for us, it kind of ties in with the Infrastructure Act from the year before, because a lot of these are building upon that, because those are direct investments, and these are grants and loans and different programs that different groups are going to kind of get, whether it be private sector to invest in. But it's a really great opportunity for states, local governments to partner with organizations and grow local economies, strengthen local communities. And so I think that's really where our opportunity lies with this.
Thank you. Coming back to you, Jessica. We just passed the 1-year anniversary of the bill signing and are now in the implementation stages. What have you seen, and what are the next steps for West Virginia?
So the next steps for West Virginia are to make a proposal and make a decision about how much and what the proposal will look like to the federal government about its share of the funds, should West Virginia decide to do that. I'm not currently sure where the State Energy Office is or where those discussions are. Delegate Hansen, maybe you could add a little bit to that. But we've already seen at the company level, obviously Justin can talk a little bit more about that, about the ongoing projects in Jackson County and Weirton. There's also a lot of money for reskilling. Coalfield Development is doing a lot of really great work in the South. You don't require a bachelor's degree or you don't require a PhD in hydrology to get some of these jobs. There are plenty of opportunities to be reskilled. I think a bigger challenge for West Virginia, and Justin, you can talk to this, is the workforce in general. West Virginia was one of the biggest states to be hit by population decline in the country. I think it was down 3%. We lost a House seat. I think that's a big issue, and I think this is a really important time where we say, okay, can we harness the opportunities in front of us to really launch ourselves forward in a different way and a different future for our children?
Any follow-up comments, Mr. Williams?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a lot ahead of us. It's been a year since it was signed. You mentioned we're just getting the guidance documents for the investments, whether it be applying for grants, and so I think everybody's still trying to figure out the next steps. And so I think the next 6 months to a year are really going to be where we see the addition of these projects. Right? We see announcements. I'm kind of skeptical as a West Virginian. For my whole life, we've seen a lot of announcements and not a lot of completion. So, take everything with a grain of salt, but I think there's some real opportunity here. And we're already seeing some of it, Form Energy has started, and so, Jackson County is really moving forward. But there are some really great opportunities. Toyota, who's been a great partner to West Virginia for a long time, has taken some of this money and they're doing additions, and they are great to do construction work with local workers, and so we really appreciate that opportunity as well.
Thank you. So, Mr. Williams, again, you're here as a representative of the West Virginia affiliated construction trades. Tell us more about your role, your organization, and how you're viewing the IRA.
Sure. So, our organization is basically it's the West Virginia State Building and Construction Trades. So we're a member organization made up of 13 construction union trades organizations. So everything you can think of: carpenters, electricians, boilermakers, insulators, pipe fitters, plumbers, operating engineers, carpenters, roofers. I don't know if I got them all there, but a lot of them. So when you build a building or a road or a bridge or a windmill or powerhouse, the people that do that construction work are the members that I represent. We have about 24,000 union construction workers in West Virginia, and somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5,000 apprentices at any given time. So, we represent the men and women doing that work. What we offer as an organization is we do legislative work. So we have a lobbyist who works at the Capitol to help with this, to ensure protections for workers. We talk about wages, we talk about safety, we talk about employment opportunities, and how we can get training and workforce development on the ground. And we have training facilities all over West Virginia amongst those 13 crafts: Charleston, Parkersburg, Wheeling, Huntington, everywhere. And so, they're in your community. These are your neighbors that do this work, and they take pride in their work. They want to do it right. They want to make sure that the land is preserved, and then they want to use it. Their kids are going to go to be in these buildings or go to these schools, and they want to do it right for their neighborhoods. And so that's what we do. And this Infrastructure Reduction or Inflation Reduction Act really is going to be an opportunity to take what we've had as a career and expand it to more people. We've got 24,000-ish workers. If we get 10,000 more people to be able to do construction and maintain these facilities. Not only is it the new construction, but it's maintaining the infrastructure as we go forward, right? And I think that's what, as Dr. Barnett was saying, like, it's really an investment into the future, not just today, but what we can do to secure these jobs for our children and their children and the state as a whole. I mean, we need people going to work. It's better for our communities. It's better for our state. They're paying taxes. They're members of our community. And so that's what our people do, and we want to grow that opportunity. And we want to give people an opportunity, as you said, that don't have college degrees. Maybe they've had an addiction problem. West Virginia has been ravaged by the opioid epidemic. We're working with the School of Diversion and Transition to get people on reentry to come into the trades. We work with our high schools and our CTCs and our CTEs to get as many people as we can who are trained to do these jobs safely, so they get to go home, to their families every day.
Thank you.
I would just add, there are index cards and pens on your table. If you have questions that come up as we talk, please feel free to write a question on those and hold it up, and one of the staff will come and get it for you.
Thanks. Dr. Barnett, how important is it for West Virginia's leaders to learn about and take advantage of the benefits of this legislation?
Short answer, vitally important. I think it's time for our leaders, both at the local and state level, to get above the fray and see the opportunity. And I think they also need to be really knowledgeable. They need to know the act, and they need to recognize opportunities and be able to translate those into projects and encourage others. I think they need to be strategic, balancing short and long range objectives. They need to be educators and really educate the community. And I'm thinking things like forums, town halls, workshops, any information campaigns that can be conducted. It's an opportunity for the grassroots to take advantage of, but they've got to be educated, made aware, and involved to get it done. I'd also encourage communities to do work with financial literacy. If we're going to use the act to stimulate independence and stability of families, they need the financial skills to do that, as a kind of a side. I think with any effort like this, they need to be transparent and accountable. They need to be able to evaluate and respond and understand the leadership principle. If what we're doing is not working, we need to change what we're doing and not have an opportunity missed.
Thank you. Our next question is for Mr. Williams and Ms. Yelmo. As we dive headfirst into year 2 of implementation, what do you think are the biggest challenges and opportunities for West Virginia?
I think we've already talked about some of that in the workforce challenges, so I'll let Justin speak a little bit more to that. But I will speak at sort of a policy level. The West Virginia State Energy Plan was from 2018 to 2022, and I don't believe there's a new one out. So I would be really interested to see, or I will be interested to see how at the state level we integrate all of this federal funding and all of these opportunities into a state energy plan that leverages all of these different things, either the CHIPS and Science Act, the Infrastructure Investments in Jobs Act, or the bipartisan infrastructure law that passed prior to the Inflation Reduction Act, and then of course the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot of opportunity here. The Department of Energy has also classified what are called energy communities, and they're designated pots of funding for different parts of West Virginia. So 5 different areas in West Virginia made that designation. So there's even more funding available on top of all of the other things that we're talking about here. So I think it's a huge opportunity to really pivot in a way that will truly, hopefully, make our lives better, right? You may hear the term clean energy transition, and that this obviously plays a big part in that. We're moving away from fossil fuels. We can of course talk about the role of natural gas and all that, which I think there is definitely a role in all that. But a lot of these funds are designed to move away from fossil fuels, so that they're designed to make your home more efficient, make your life better. With those efficiencies, it also makes your air quality better. It makes your home more resilient to extreme weather, and all of these things are really important. So I think it's a really big opportunity to see how it's going to play out. And even if, for instance, my grandmother is not going to part with her electric stove, even though it's 65 years old, but she might want to still have that available for me. So I can replace my stove. Or maybe if you personally aren't going to use some of these funds, it might be beneficial to put some solar panels on a school, or upgrade the windows in a Boys and Girls Club or something like that. So I think there's a ton of opportunity here should we choose to go that route.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the challenge is, I was kind of tracking, the number of job opportunities, and right now there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 projects between the Infrastructure Act and IRA and stuff in West Virginia, and so that's anywhere from a couple $5,000 to do some home heating to $15,000 I think for Calhoun County schools to do solar on their school system, to $760 million for Form Energy. So it really covers the spectrum, but to do the work for this amount of money in a pretty short period of time, there has to be understanding of what that workforce looks like, what understanding of the training that goes along with it. And there's some concern, I know, that we get people trained, right? Part of this money also goes to abandoned mine lands and making sure we get that cleaned up and well plugging in West Virginia. And so there's a lot of pieces out there that take a lot of training, and the trades have been doing training for hundreds of years, so we're set up to continue to do that training, and that's part of the reason the act was put in place the way it was, to get trained workers into these. But it takes time to get people trained into the workforce, and it just takes a mindset change, right? So I went to college, very privileged to go to college. Neither of my parents were college graduates, like a lot of West Virginia's history, right? But we have a mindset to send every kid to college, or we have for a long time. I think that mindset's changing a little bit to value the trades and a workforce that I'm able to represent today. And so that's taken some time, but it also takes investment from the state. There's been some investment in that, but I think there's some other opportunities out there. I mean, in Pennsylvania, they just recently announced they're doing $400 million in workforce grants to anybody who trains a worker, up to $40,000 per worker, to get them trained. So that way there is an investment from the state into those workers as well. And we have some similar opportunities here in West Virginia that we've worked through, but Pennsylvania did it right because they put a number, $400 million in the workforce development. That's going to get people trained. Illinois has done the same thing for a number of years, smaller amount, but they're like in year 4 of some workforce training where they help employers get rebates, I guess, for training. But again, it also comes down to educating these groups out there that they're able to do it. Our local governments, our cities, our counties, they have limited capacity, limited staff that they have to, do the day-to-day operations of their counties and cities. And so, it's hard for them to pick up another grant time, writing it, doing all that stuff. And so, it's got to be some work, and it's great to see people from state legislature as well as local governments here, because they have a lot of opportunities in front of us. And so I think that's really one of the biggest opportunities as well.
Thank you both. So switching gears a little bit, Ms. Yamo, you are the Director of Climate Security Programs at ASP. What is climate security, and what does that have to do with the Inflation Reduction Act?
Great question. I'm sure most people are kind of confused by that title. So one of our lines of effort at ASP, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit think tank, and we were founded about 20 years ago by a bipartisan group of senators to discuss the changing nature of national security. And climate is one of our big lines of effort. And what we do is not necessarily environmental, and it's not scientific. It is examining how climate is impacting our national security and primarily our military. So I'll just give you a little anecdote here, if you'll bear with me. If you look at something like firefighting, because there's been an increase in extreme weather events and extreme wildfires, which I'm sure everybody has experienced this summer. You saw what happened from the Canadian wildfires in New York. The latest figures in in fiscal year 2016, the U.S. National Guard spent 14,000 days in firefighting. So they were doing 14,000 days worth of firefighting. In 2021, that number rose to 176,000 days. That's more than a 12-fold increase in 5 years. That's astonishing. That means that our National Guard is not doing other missions. They're not doing other training. It's impacting their readiness. So the same thing can be said for our military installations along the coast. So our Navy, by nature, it's by water, and it has to contend with sea level rise and coastal erosion. So one of the things that we look at is how it impacts our military installations and how it impacts our readiness. Obviously, I think almost everybody has paid attention to the hurricanes that always come this time of year. In 2018, Hurricane Michael essentially leveled Tyndall Air Force Base. That base is particularly important in Florida and to our national security because it's the home of the F-22, which is a premier strike fighter pilot training facility. And it basically leveled the base. So one of the things that we do is study how climate is impacting that. What does all of this have to do with the Inflation Reduction Act? And then I'll turn it to Dr. B to talk a little bit more about how the military approaches these kinds of things. The Inflation Reduction Act does a lot of energy incentives. Why is that particularly important for military installations? Most military installations operate off of commercial power. So the same outages that affect your house affect the military installations. So resilience in those systems and transitioning into cleaner sources that are more sustainable is a high priority for the Department of Defense. And this is something that writ large the national security enterprise and the Department of Defense and each of the services has been thinking about since about 2007, 2008. And I'll let Dr. B speak to his experience as former active duty.
Thanks. And I'd like to give you a little bit of context first. And I have to tell you that the veracity, I have a checker in the room, and that is retired Colonel Michael Todorovich, who's a member of the Clendenin Town Council. And as I remember my Guard experience, he was there every day. He introduced pajamas to New Orleans in the middle of Katrina at a staff meeting about 6 o'clock in the morning. So let me give you a little context first. The Guard is a little bit different from the Army Reserve or the active component in that it has 2 missions. It has a warfighting mission as a federal, part of the federal force structure, and it has a state mission for domestic emergencies, however they're defined by the governor. So in terms of the warfighting mission, the West Virginia Guard, since September the 11th, 2001, is the most deployed Army Guard force in the country. the most deployed. So you can, you're either in your warfighting mission, you're getting ready for a deployment, being deployed, or just getting back. And some of our units have been deployed 7 or 8 times. Now, what I tell you though, that with all those deployments, again, the most heavily utilized in the country per capita, we had the lowest casualty rate in the country. And our history of service, if you're familiar with what West Virginia's done in terms of response to the military, it's always been a very patriotic state. People signed to serve and do that well. In addition to that, the domestic piece, during my tenure, and I was fortunate, I was commander of the West Virginia Army Guard for 15 years and served under 4 governors and probably the longest tenure in the history of the state. But during that time, we had 78 FEMA declared national disasters in our state. All 55 counties at least once. We also played a significant role in Katrina because we had so much experience. So I've seen devastation firsthand and continue to be aware, as you are, of the catastrophic events that are happening. But if you think about what has the Guard done because of this, let me just give you a couple of things. First is really to learn to deal with complexity and chaos. When I went in the Guard, the saying was you do 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer. Now for Guard people, you're lucky to get a weekend off a month and forget about the summer deal. That's long gone. So it's very complex, it's chaotic. We've rebuilt facilities in the state pretty much throughout. The old paradigm was the armory was to be the center of the town. So we built facilities for a long time right in the middle of floodplains and had many of them destroyed and heavy destruction. So the strategy was to get them to high ground, get them so that you have energy resilience and efficiency. So major effort with facilities, and in the last 20 years, just fantastic accomplishments of that, but still more work to do. It's had a major impact on training and readiness, as I just alluded to. The energy considerations are 180 degrees from 20 or 30 years ago. Communication, the concept now is you have to be able to communicate 24/7 regardless, and that's a much different world. We actually, through Colonel Todorovich's efforts, were the first to be able to communicate in New Orleans after Katrina because we took it with us and have learned that lesson. And another one that goes sometimes unnoticed but vitally important is the importance of leader development. We passed the Tuition Assistance Act in 1995, and what that's resulted in is the West Virginia National Guard is the most educated workforce in West Virginia, and they have to be to carry out these complex and demanding assignments that we have. Specifically in 1995, 6% of the West Virginia Guard had a degree or were in college, and now it's 78%. So education is a huge driver, and I think in all this, the importance of that I talked about earlier with leadership, education is a vital component of that.
I would just add a big congratulations to the Mountaineer Challenge Academy, who just had its first cadet accepted to West Point, which is a big deal, and I think that's a really great program. So it's a little outside of the scope here, but I just wanted to say congratulations, and thank you both for your service.
We also have a heart surgeon.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I hope I meet him.
Yeah.
Hope you never meet too.
Thank you. So, Mr. Williams and Dr. Barnett, as we wrap up today, what would you say if you had to condense some of the biggest takeaways for our fellow West Virginians and our leaders?
Man, that's a tough one to take. Several $100 billion of money out there. But I think that the biggest takeaway is don't be afraid to invest in our communities, right? That's what this is all about. Whether it's a community getting this grant to put solar panels on, or it's investing in local workers to do the jobs, we have to take advantage of it. We don't want to be here, we don't want to look back in 7 years and say, man, we really missed the boat, and look what Ohio and Pennsylvania and Kentucky and have done, and we're still sitting here at 50th in workforce participation, and we didn't invest in our people. As the general was saying, we have a very patriotic state. We have a state that has, for the history of our country, mined the coal to steal from Senator Manchin, mined the coal that built the steel, that built the ships that protected our country, right? So that was my paraphrase of it. He'll correct me later, I'm sure. But that's what we've done in West Virginia, and we will continue to be an all-in energy state, building solar farms, building wind farms, building storage, building the factories to build the storage and the windmills in West Virginia, and paying people a good wage to do that. That's the key to being number one in all the categories we want to be in the future. And that's what we have to do. Just on a side note too, we love when National Guard or military members join the trades, because they do have great training and work effort, and they're always the first ones there. So we always appreciate that, and again, appreciate your service.
Yeah, I think in kind of a takeaway, it's a time to lead. We need to get up on the balcony and see first, and understand first, and act first. I'd love for West Virginia to take the lead, to heal itself, if you would. The opportunities and the tools are there. And then I think our leaders need to lead with integrity. They need to have inspirational character and competence. I know that our people will respond, and it's vitally important, because I think our nation is at stake and our state is at stake.
Thank you. For our last question, Ms. Yomo, where can people go if they want to find out more about the IRA incentives and programs?
There are tons of resources. So, like I said, the state is still in the process of, I hope, putting together a proposal either to decline or accept funds. So I can't speak directly to what to do at the state, but Rewiring America, it's a website, it's an organization that has a calculator where you can actually calculate the energy savings for your home. Sierra Club also has some. I've got a couple of printouts up here, or you can just grab my card or go to americansecurityproject.org, and we will direct you to any and all resources that we have.
Thank you. Thank you all for such a great conversation about these opportunities for West Virginia. At this time, I'm going to practice my handwriting reading skills. In a former life, I was in healthcare, so hopefully I get everyone's message correct up here. So we'll move to the Q&A session from the audience. So most of the cities in West Virginia lack personnel with grant writing experience. What do you think is most important to do to ensure that we're accessing as much of these funds as possible? Is there anyone that would like to?
I can start. I would say to have a plan. And you don't have to have the personnel in place, but having a plan on how to get there is very important. So if you are a school board member, how do you usually communicate up to your leadership at the state level? If you're a school board and you, I'm just going to use Wood County as an example because I'm a Parkersburg native. So if you sit on the Wood County Board of Education and you want to electrify your school bus fleet and you want to access the funds that are in the IRA to do so, where do you go to get those funds? Well, you make that request like you would make any other request. So shoot that up to your state board of education. They should be able to communicate with the state energy office. This is really important for the state energy office, again, to have the plan. I'm probably going to get sharpshooted for keep mentioning them, but you don't have to have the answers, but you just have to know how to get them. So also participate in your city council meetings, participate in your leadership meetings with your community organizations, be that a church or a soccer league, if you want to put, new lights on your soccer field, as well as your elected officials. So whoever you are at the state level, whoever your representation is, those are the people that you should be talking to say, hey, how do we get this money? We're interested in learning more. They should be able to point you in that direction.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would say look for partner organizations as well. One of the things we've seen here is conglomerations of groups coming together to kind of conjoin resources to work together to get some of these grants. I think about, it's a different kind of grant, but there's the Act Now Coalition with Huntington, Charleston, and a number of groups that have got $200 million coming to the area to do work. Universities, right? WVU, Marshall, UC. I mean, there are professors who are always willing to help. I'm gonna throw some people under the bus, maybe, but they're willing to help at most of these places. There are different groups. We don't apply for grants, but we're partnering with others to apply for grants. We're looking at partnership letters, support letters for organizations that need help, for other community organizations that are doing this. I know there are a number of them across the region that do different things, so look for those partner organizations to partner up with as well.
Thank you. For our next question, can you speak to funding opportunities specifically for infrastructure on former mine sites for development?
Yes. So I don't have it right in front of me, but there is dedicated funding. I don't think it's necessarily in the IRA. I think it's actually external to that process altogether, for retrofitting mines. There's also some really, really interesting things happening technologically with either being able to, I'm going to say retrofit, but there's a chemical process that you can do to take coal ash and turn it into batteries. So there's some really cool things that are happening. I think that's external, as far as I know, to the IRA. But there are, if you go to the Department of Energy's website and look at the coal communities working group, there's a specific working group it includes other places out in the West. That can serve as a resource. Obviously, you can email me, and I'm also going to throw Ryan under the bus here. Ryan Thorne is the Rural Development Director at USDA, and he can definitely provide a lot of the information. And again, your elected officials. So I can't speak to that specifically any more than that, but there are plenty of people that definitely can.
Yeah, and I know there's some Brownsfields groups in West Virginia. I think they actually have a conference coming up next week, maybe this week. So there's that organization that has a lot of resources, and that's again I know there's a lot of partner groups there because it's there's multiple states that get some of that money. I know I'm trying to think as far as IRA specific for those. Obviously, depending on what you're going to do with it, right? If you're going to build a solar farm, there's different credits. If it's in one of the specific coal communities, you can get extra tax credits based on the project. If you're using, prevailing wage and apprenticeship, you get extra credits. So depending on, what the project would be on that location would help determine, what you're gonna, whether you do it under IRA or infrastructure, or if there's other sources of updates to it. If it's mine reclamation, there's money under this. If there's the rare earth minerals has a big process, and that's what WVU I know is working on, a big rare earth minerals acid mine drainage cleanup project with the State Department of Environmental Protection. So there's a number of opportunities out there in different ways, so it just depends on the project, I think.
Thank you. So for the next question, it's recognized that these funds are not singular, but rather there's many funding opportunities. And it seems that when they come up, there's some short timelines, typically under 3 months, which are difficult sometimes for a municipality to ramp up to take advantage of that time frame or the monies. So how can small local governments put themselves in a position to take advantage of them?
That's a great question. Whoever asked that, I would say if you have the ability to get on some of the weekly newsletters that a lot of organizations will send out. So the Department of Energy's coal working group, they have an email chain that they will push out information to you. If you are interested, I can definitely help you connect with some of those people. I know more at the federal level than I do at the state level, but each of these organizations should be able to push information to you, so you should have a little bit more lead time. Some of them also have extension opportunities, so that would be my best guess at what to do. That's how I would approach it if I were in city government working and was trying to get at that information.
And there's there are a lot of resources. The state actually has an infrastructure hub website that has some information on it about the grants and deadlines. And I know I was looking at it this morning just to kind of refresh. And I know between now and the end of the year, there are about 128 different grant opportunities, grant, loan, direct payment. And so part of it, and I think part of it's interesting for local governments, they have a direct pay option that private sector doesn't. So you can get direct cash, versus having to take it as a tax credit in the future. So there's some opportunities there that it may cost you a little bit in the front, but you'll be able to get a quicker return on your investment, I guess, as far as local governments.
Thanks. So we have just a couple more questions that we have great time to get through. So is there someone specifically or an office specifically that has a handle on all the available opportunities and is promoting them in the state?
I don't know. It should be coming through the West Virginia Office of Energy. That's where a lot of especially the energy incentives associated with the Inflation Reduction Act, the state level Office of Energy is where those proposals should be coming from. They're the ones that should be doing that. I can't speak any more specifically to that.
The governor's office has put up a website that at one point was really up to date. I don't know if it's been updated very recently, but it's the West Virginia Infrastructure Hub. And on it, it talks about connecting the Mountain State with both the Infrastructure Act and the IRA. And it has a lot of information about the Infrastructure Act, less about the IRA at this point, but you can also track grants on there. But I know the Office of Energy has kind of taken some transition recently. They have a new director, I believe, and so I don't know where that's going to fall into that periphery, I would guess, in there.
And that makes sense, and that I didn't realize that, but that is similar to what I've seen in some other states. So Arizona did not have an Office of Energy. They had a special section in the governor's office, and they have, since the passage of these seminal pieces of legislation, the IIJA and then the IRA, they have developed a state energy office just so they can figure out how to manage all of this.
I'll also throw, Senator Manchin's office is a great resource for all of these things, as the preeminent person who got it done, and so they have a lot of the information that I have in front of me is stuff that they provided as far as the specifics of it, and it's an ongoing process. We talk about the IRS is still issuing guidance on some of the tax credits, and so it's a evolving process. So I think reaching out to their office, and they'll provide you information when they can. Other state legislators, some will be better at it than others. So we'll say that. But
thank you. So, Mr. Williams, this might be a question for you specifically. How many training facilities with West Virginia Act are located in southern West Virginia, specifically Beckley and below?
Great question, and not very many, honestly. A lot of ours are Charleston to Huntington area. So on this corridor, there is one in Princeton. We have Parkersburg area, and then we have North Central, Northern Panhandle, and Eastern Panhandle. And that's, part of that is where the work has been prior, right? So our members have done work in the Parkersburg area because of the industries that were there, and same with Charleston, the Chemical Valley. We've done the work on the plants, and so you put your training facilities where your workforce is. We haven't had as much workforce, but one thing I would say about our apprenticeship programs is that there's no tuition, so it's not costing you money to be there. They're all set up a little bit differently, but they're jointly administered between the union and the contractor, so that the training there, you're there getting your training, you kind of know what you're getting into, and so there's resources to help people get to training facilities. I know, for example, the operating engineers, so it's the heavy equipment operators, they have one training facility in West Virginia because they have cranes and bulldozers, and it's wouldn't be cost effective to have multiple locations with multiple cranes. So they have a dormitory on site where they provide lodging and food. Electricians, they have more locals around the state, and so they're Huntington, Charleston. So it's a little more localized on some of the crafts. So it just depends on the crafts and how they operate. Each of them are a little bit different, but happy to connect with anybody if they've got questions about an apprenticeship program. Please grab a card before we leave. So,
thank you. I believe some of this was touched on, but we may be able to extend the discussion a little bit. How do local officials access grants, assistance to reverse engineer projects that they have in mind? There seems to be a gap between the funds and the need. Comments?
I'm just going to say your elected officials. There should be folks in those offices, whether you start at the state level with your delegates, or if you go directly to Senator Manchin or Senator Capito or Representative Moody, whoever it may be, their offices should be able to help you. Again, it's a bit of a chicken or the egg situation. If you don't have the resources to go find the grants and apply for the grants, then how are you going to get the grants, right? So some of it may be just finding volunteers or finding innovative partnerships. So maybe there is a student organization if you live near a college or university and they want to, cut their teeth on doing some grant writing for free until you can get the ball rolling. Or if there's a community organization, that could do that, or if there's a church group or something like that. I think this is a tough thing to get at, and you just have to find a way. And I have no doubt that West Virginians can get it done, because I have never met more resilient people than the people of West Virginia.
Yeah, I would say they're again, the partnerships, the groups that are out there. Other groups like ASP that exist on the national level that are looking at these types of projects and programs. We work a lot with a group called the Blue Green Alliance. That's kind of a environmental labor conglomeration trying to get clean up the environment, but done it with union jobs. And so, there are other organizations nationally that do that, work for small governments that I'm sure would love to help you out in those situations.
I think from a leadership perspective, it's important to realize it's a mindset issue. You're right at the implementation stage, and the opportunity is there. So I think you almost have to adopt the mindset of find a way to yes. And who else do I need to ask? Who else do I need to partner with? Who else can I collaborate with? I've got this need, and I've got this passion, and I've got this project, but don't let yourself get in the way, if that makes sense to you. And I think that's important, particularly at this phase of where we are with this. The opportunity's just unbounding, but the drive has to be there to get to it. I don't think it's going to be a cookbook approach very easily.
That's, I think, where the innovation will really come in. And so maybe instead of an individual city or township, maybe you look at either the county level or multi-county level. So you look at, Wood County, Jackson County doing a joint proposal for something, and pulling your resources. I think that's something that's probably going to be worthwhile to suss out.
Thank you. So our final question, and anything that may have not already been mentioned, but what specific plans are already in place to direct the IRA funds to Southern West Virginia?
I don't know of any.
I think that goes back to the fact that the Department of Energy just released its state guidance, or its guidance to states and tribes on how to make the proposal for the funds. If somebody knows different, let me know. But right now the funds are going to individual companies, which there are lots of different incentives for different groups of people. So if you are from Southern West Virginia and if you're an individual who lives in Fayetteville, and you want to, put insulation in your house, and you want to buy a new electric stove, wait until after the state figures out what it's going to do, and then the state should be formulating that plan, and that goes back to the state needs to have a plan, whatever that is. If the state decides not to adopt any of the funds, they have the right to do that. If they decide to go after the money that is already allocated for them, then have a plan on how to do that. You don't have to say, oh, it's going to go to this person in this office. You could just, there are ways to make that plan. So it goes back to however the state decides to formulate its proposal and its plan.
And I would say, in the legislation itself, there's the benefits for coal communities. So if there's been a shuttered coal fire powerhouse or a coal mine in that census tract or the neighboring one, they get, the private investor or whoever gets a bump in their tax credits for that. So that there's no direct way to get it to Southern West Virginia specifically, but you get, as an investor, as a company, you get a increase in the tax credits if you locate in Southern West Virginia, because there was pretty much a coal miner that is shuttered in all of our census tracts down that direction. And so I think that's one of the in the legislation itself, and I know Senator Manchin and others were very specific in getting that piece in the legislation, right? Because West Virginia, other states similar to West Virginia, the goal was to have this money go to those states that needed it the most, and the areas in those states that needed it the most. And so that was one of the biggest pieces of the legislation for that. So it's not just West Virginia, because there are other places that have had energy communities all around country, but I think there are ways that it was directed at us, particularly for the energy security portion of it. Natural gas being the bridge to a really clean energy future, right? We want to move to the cleanest energy possible, and natural gas is that bridge, in a secure way to get us there. And so I think that's also a benefit to West Virginia and what we can do while getting there, because we've lost so much manufacturing over the last 40 years that we can't just kind of flip a switch and start manufacturing windmill blades in West Virginia. Unfortunately, you have to build a facility, get people trained, and that's not an overnight thing. And we're seeing billions of dollars in investments around the country. And if we get a fraction of that in West Virginia, we'll be better off for it. So.
Yeah, I'll just add that the state of California, I found the numbers here, the state of California has already been provisionally awarded $582 million. The state of Texas has been tentatively awarded $700 million. So this is not a small amount of money that we're talking about here. That's truly transformational.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the University of Charleston, I'd like to thank Dr. Barnett, Ms. Yomo, and Mr. Williams for joining our panel today. The University of Charleston prides itself in being an institution that allows for discussion on achievement and prosperity of West Virginia's future. This concludes our event. We'd like to thank everyone who attended today, both in person and virtually. If you'd like to stick around, please enjoy some refreshments and feel free to network with the great leaders that are in attendance today. Thank you.
I just occurred.
Okay, good.
I didn't have a folder, but yeah. He said, I knew it was something good, but I didn't know what it was.
Great.
Yeah.
But I've got to meet. Sir, coming.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank
Really
you.
appreciated your comments.
Oh, thank you.
I do. It's back there, and I will give it to you. Actually, I might be able to